Help me to stay competitive against the big multinational corporations by subscribing to this channel, hitting the notification bell, liking the video, and maybe leaving a comment in the comment sections below. Thank you very much and enjoy the video. Greetings, free thinkers. Welcome to the Hoggcast. How are you today? I hope you're good. I hope you're taking your isolation like a man, and I hope you are staying healthy and looking forward to the eventual reopening of society that we all hope is coming. Now, on today's video, I'm asking you not to shoot the messenger. I'm asking you to watch this video in its entirety. I'm sure you haven't got anything better to do, and I mean that in a respectful manner, thanks entirely to this isolation. So just watch what I'm trying to say. Now, the optics of the things that you are going to see are important, and that's why I'm going over this. I'm saying that the draconian measures implemented by some police, I should say, who should know better than to do this and should know to use their discretion when discretion is an option. And also, we're going to look at... Now, I love the NHS. I think they're doing an amazing job. They are fighting a silent war, which is half of what this video is about. The silent war on the wards and the silent war on the streets. The silent war against this enemy that is the you-know-what sickness that is crippling people and countries across the globe. That being said, I want to discuss the optics of dancing nurses, and I also want to discuss the problem with the heavy-handed authoritarianism that is being displayed by a lot of police, not necessarily police forces in general, but individual police officers and local politicians who are taking it upon themselves to try to force through very draconian measures. So without further ado, let's get into the first video clip.
How you doing?
Hey, how you doing, sir?
If I can see your license, I'm giving you an opportunity to move city ordinance right now. We're giving citations. This is a gathering, even though you're in your vehicle. If I can see your license, sir, I give you an opportunity to move now.
The ministers went to the house of the Lord. The way the servants went to the house of the Lord. Listen, it meant something to them. It means something to me. You know, I just love to go to church. The church. Jesus loved the church. Jesus.
So even though the governor said twice today that you can't stop in parking lot church services, y'all still going to try to stop it?
I'm not aware of that.
We was not to comply. They forcing us to make human contact. It makes a lot of sense. Somewhere right now in the city of Greenville, real crime is going on. They got half of the police squad in Temple Baptist Church. 70 and 80-year-old people. Most of them's never even had a speeding ticket. But this is a better use of Greenville's resources. A retired nurse. Never bothered nobody. Being threatened to go to jail for going to church.
Okay, sir, here's your license. I need your signature here.
Is this an official ticket?
Yes, it's an official ticket. You get a copy. Your court date, 8 June of 2020 at 9 a.m. at 302 Main Street.
Thanks, sir. You have a blessed night. Just handed a ticket by a man with no gloves. Gave me an ink pen to sign it. He was not wearing gloves. We was complying 100% with the governor's ordinance on COVID-19, and they come and force us not to comply. They force us to make human...
So what you just saw there was a police officer in the United States who is, albeit wearing a mask, but he is not, as the man said, covering his hands. He's issuing a ticket to everybody who turns up to a church service on that day. And bearing in mind, they're not actually going into the church, they're staying in their cars. It is kind of like a drive-through church service, which is an excellent way in which you can get around the isolation and social distancing measures. The man said himself that he is in line with what the governor's recommendations were, but that is still not enough for the police officers here. Now, They are intent on ticketing as many people as possible. I'm not sure if the police officers themselves are religious. If they are, then they really need to look at themselves in the mirror. If they are Christians and they're doing that to fellow Christians, they need to look at themselves in the mirror, because I'm sure you've heard about the big song and dance being made over apparently the you-know-what virus being... apparently it's racist. Apparently we're racist. Apparently it is disproportionately affecting people from ethnic minorities, and apparently that's because of isms and ists. However, what they don't tell you is the reason why it's disproportionately affecting them is because they are not listening to and abiding by the rules of social distancing that you and I are obeying and taking part in. Here in the United Kingdom, the Muslim community is going on just as normal, and in France they have actually made amendments to their policies so that the districts of France that is inhabited by entirely or almost entirely by the future doctors and engineers the Marxist EU bloc told us we were getting from North Africa and the Middle East, they have made amendments to their policies to exclude them from the lockdowns and the curfews and the social distancing, because they know full well that they will refuse to obey, like they have refused to obey. And what's happened? They have got disproportionately affected by this outbreak. But of course, with it being the modern woke modern era that we are in, you cannot ask them to take responsibility for their own actions, so of course it's our fault. Western man bad, orange man bad, you know the drill. Ask yourself, in the situation you're seeing in the display box and have been seeing over the last few moments, ask yourself who's in the right or wrong here. This isn't a video to bash the police. It certainly isn't a video to bash the medical NHS health workers. It is a video largely in support of the health workers, although it is slightly critical of the optics of the dancing, and I appreciate it's about stress, relieving stress, but it is causing a lot of people to question whether the people in the medical services and hospitals are really as overstretched as they say they are. That being said, in terms of the police, look, we all support good policing and good police officers. We especially support the military and the National Guard. However, this illness and the isolation situation we find ourselves in, and the quote unquote, and I'm quoting the police officer here, the suspension of our rights. Now that phrase alone should send shivers down your spine, okay? Because where does free will come into this? But as the officer said, suspension of our rights has put us in a position where we find a worryingly large number of police officers refusing to, and not just police, but people in authority in general. And bearing in mind, most of the people in authority only got into those roles because they like to be the ones in authority. And a lot of those people are not using their discretion to behave in a civilized manner. Instead, they're pushing their authority to the limits. And that's not a good thing. Okay, so moving on to the optics of that was the silent war on the streets that you're seeing there, the silent war being waged against authoritarianism, because the police could and should have used their discretion to understand that people sitting in their cars, minding their own business, attending church, they are no threat to anyone. On the contrary, you have injected yourself into the situation. Being a person in a position of power and authority, you are an essential worker, so you are at work every day of the week. and that is including, of course, during these times of isolation. So if there's anyone who is a threat at transmitting the illness from one person to another, it is you, because yes, you have a mask on, but you don't have your hands covered, and a lot of the churchgoers there are elderly people with pre-existing health conditions, who are, of course, the exact type of people most susceptible to contracting the illness, and they're not going to be transmitting it to each other sitting in their car getting the sermon from the bishop or the priest or the pastor. They're going to get it, if they do get it, from you, because you forced them to wind down their window. You forced them to interact with people who are out on a daily basis interacting with people yourself. And not only that, you of course are failing to understand that in times of crisis, the one thing people of faith, the one thing people who are religious rely on, is their faith in God. That being said, moving on to what you can see on your screen now. Now, this is the dancing nurses that I told you about. Now, the second part of the silent war, which is what this video is about, is the silent war that is being waged against nurses and doctors by this illness, this infection, on hospital wards. Now, they're doing an amazing job. The NHS here in the United Kingdom are doing an amazing job. They have had tens of thousands of retired and former medical staff and NHS workers offering their time free, I might add, volunteering to help in this war, because make no mistake, the nurses are on the front line. That being said, there are people out there who are criticising the dancing routines for a number of reasons, and I will lay those out to you, and you can make your own mind up whether or not these the arguments they're making are just, or whether they're not, whether they're unjust. First of all is optics. That is the one thing that people are concerned about more than anything else, because you have a situation where, to them at least, it's looking bad on the NHS or any, because it's all over the world. Some of the nurses dancing you see on your screen are from the United States. Some are even from Iran. The footage you're seeing, I've got the dancing on loop because it's only short. They only do short, usually TikTok clips, and the dancing that they're doing, they're the exotic ones you see. If you can see the exotic ones, they're the ones from Iran, of course, the Arabian Nights type. But anyway, the point I was making is the optics of the whole thing is that people are starting to look at this and say, well, maybe they're not as rushed off their feet or as stressed or as overran as possible. And in fact, I watched a Tucker Carlson show the other night in which he was talking about a large number of hospitals who are actually letting nurses go because the wards are pretty empty. I know of people here in the United Kingdom who, I have a friend called Dennis who showed me his footage when his brother Jason, who recently got hit by a motorbike and was in hospital, and they were telling me that the wards are pretty empty. He tried to take photographic footage of this. He got it, but the security in the hospital tried to seize his phone from him. So no, you can't do that. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. They're worried about the optics, and optics are very important. And the second, more important, in my opinion, more important criticism people have is that in the United Kingdom especially, the footage you can see of the nurses wearing no PPE, no mask, no gloves, and they're very close together, that's footage taken from the NHS hospitals in the United Kingdom. And some people are looking at this footage and saying, well, if we're supposed to distance ourselves, if we're supposed to take measures to wear protective equipment, why aren't they doing it as well? You know, so that's something to take into consideration. I myself I'm not criticising the NHS staff. I am criticising the police in the United States for what they did in terms of their draconian and authoritarianism. There's no need for it. But when it comes to the silent war in the wards, I am just passing on messages to you and an argument to you, because I believe a discussion should be had around, is dancing nurses a good look for, is it good optics for health services across the West? And yeah, moving back from dancing nurses and the optics of the silent war on the wards and going back to the silent war on the streets, and what you can see on your screen here in the display box is a tweet from someone in Kentucky who has recently, I'm gathering it's his local church, where just the same as the footage you saw at the beginning with the police officers who are acting in an unnecessarily, in my opinion, an unnecessarily authoritarian manner. The same thing's happening in a Kentucky church where a large number of police officers have turned up to record the license plates of people attending the church. And bearing in mind, this is these new drive-through church thing that a lot of people are doing in response to the silent war on the streets against this horrible illness, in which they stay confined to their cars in the parking lot, and the pastor does his sermon that way. And bearing in mind, I said it once, I'll say it again, in times of crisis like this, people will, because they're human, and people have always done this, people will look to their faith to draw inspiration and strength. And for the police to be menacingly walking up and down the car park, writing down the license plate numbers of the churchgoers is astounding to me, because there's a whole lot of mosques down there. There's a whole lot of mosques who are packing people inside the building, shoulder to shoulder. But you're not on their case, are you? You're not on their case. It's just the church. It's this war on Christianity. This is just it being taken to a new level. I was under the impression we have something called equality, civil rights. Wasn't that what you guys were talking about all along? Well, the definition of equality is that everyone, including those horrible types that look like me, okay, people that look like me, we have equality too. So you hold us all to the same standard. When you start holding people to different standards based on who they are, where they come from, and all the other immutable characteristics, when you start doing that, you are no longer an equal society. What the police should be doing, in my opinion, in times like this, is engaging, doing right by in the street war against this horrible illness. Like the medical staff are fighting the silent war on the wards. Those in the police force and the military and the National Guard should be fighting the good fights in this silent war on the streets. And I am speaking most namely against people like this, who you can see in the display box on your screen at the moment. This person is and has found themselves in hot water for I can't use the word, but you can see it on your screen. But they've been engaging in that type of thing you can see on your screen. And the reason why they've been charged with that is because they've been threatening to infect people with the you-know-what illness during these times of crisis. Instead of hassling people who are merely going for a drive-through sermon, hassling 80-year-old elderly Christian people who look like me, get out there and deal with people like this, who are threatening to actually infect people, innocent people. They are the ones who need to be locked up. Go and take their license plates. Okay, go and ticket them. At the end of the day, it is up to you as an individual to decide whether or not the reasoning behind the nurses dancing and the doctors dancing across the world during this heightened time of the virus, with the epidemic, with the claims that they are worked off their feet and they're working 18 hours a day. It is down to you to decide for yourself whether or not it is just an act of stress relief, etc., etc., and the other reasons given for it. That is down to you. I myself wholly support the NHS, and I wholly support all the medical staff who are working tirelessly at the moment to get us back to a state of normality. I'm not sure what the figures are outside of the United Kingdom, but here in the United Kingdom, so far, 19 medical people who work in the medical profession, 19 people who are nurses, doctors, auxiliary nurses, etc., etc., have so far, unfortunately, passed away due to this terrible sickness. And those are just the numbers who have actually passed away. Doesn't include people who have been infected and have gone on to live. It is just the people who have unfortunately passed away, and those people passed away for us, so let's make sure that their passing is not in vain. When it comes to the police, yes, pretty much all of us all do support the police and good policing. However, in these trying times, clamping down on Christian churchgoers whilst allowing those who attend the mosque to go on free about their business, quite simply is not fair. In fact, it is not even about the postmodern definition of equality. It comes down quite simply to being not fair, and it is time that we started to push back on the really heavy duty authoritarianism that is unfortunately creeping into Western society. It seems like us in the West, infection or no infection, have reached a point where we have quite simply forgotten who we are. We've forgotten what freedoms our forefathers passed away fighting for us. They unfortunately gave their lives on many a time the battlefield to give us the rights we enjoy today. And although we are in a very dark hour with the illness that is taking so many people far too soon, that being said, we do still, however, have immutable rights that were laid down by not only our forefathers, but documents going back as far as the Magna Carta. And in the immortal words of one of the more prominent founding fathers of the United States, and I will quote him here, "Those who trade liberty for safety deserve neither." Thank you very much for watching this video, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think in the comment sections below. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and most importantly, share this video, because that helps me stay competitive with the big multinational corporations that YouTube have chosen to prioritise. Thank you and goodbye.